Hello, I'm Kellyanne Chaos. And this is Stone the Crone. Today I'm here with my daughter, Melody, and we're just going to have a little conversation about something that she learnt recently through her music teacher. And it was a story that was very empowering, I believe, for women. And that was... What was it? What was it that your teacher was telling you about?
Blind auditions for women, and just the general gist about having the females be able to come into orchestras and bands with blind auditions, and they were more likely to come in because of it.
Okay, so these blind auditions were for big orchestras like the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra, I think it's called, and the New York Orchestra. So this came into effect, I think it was 1969. And so they had everybody audition for the orchestra and not be seen. So the result of this was more women in the orchestras, and surprisingly a lot more women in the orchestras. So it turns out that in the Boston Orchestra went up to about 1/3 the amount of women. The New York Orchestra was about, even at some stages, up to 50% women, which is, I mean, ideally what you want to see. Now, what I want to ask you is, how do you feel it would affect women if the blind orchestra was taken away?
It affected a lot. At least back then it influences women a lot, because it was very stereotypical for women to not be in orchestras, not play instruments. If they did, it usually was at home. Piano, violin, just kind of at home. But with the blind auditions, they were able to play, and they were seen as their music. They weren't seen as a person, like they were just seen as the individual sound of the instrument. They weren't seen as a person. So they had them behind curtains when they did the auditions. They'd have the judges in front and they have the person behind the curtain. So they actually, when they performed, there was nothing at all. All like they could hear, all that they were knowing was the sound of the person playing. So it was completely blind. If it's blind, it's a lot more fair within the music world, because in the music world you want a good sound, you want only the best people in your bands, you want everyone that kind of has a very similar sound.
So you're saying a similar standard all round, so that is the right of the orchestra to be able to do this, and it sets aside the best from the average. So what if say somebody come out and they said that they found it racist, or they found it non-inclusive, the blind orchestra? Do you think that actually rates?
Well, it's not about it being it's all about being inclusive, yes, but it's more about it being inclusive to people that deserve to be in it, that own the talented, because they only value for talent. If someone came in with a different skin color or had a disability, like they were blind or something, it shouldn't matter if it's a blind audition. It doesn't really matter about, I mean, it's always good to be inclusive, but it shouldn't matter about it, because it's all about the one significant thing. It's all about the music.
Okay, so I read an article with the New York Times, and they were saying that the blind orchestra is pretty archaic, which means an old sort of idea, an old philosophy, and that to promote diversity and inclusiveness, that it should be completely taken away, disbanded, that they're all A+ musicians nowadays that even audition in the first place. So why not have those that are more dark people, more Latino people, more gender fluid people. Do you think it is the orchestra's right to have the best of the best and keep blind auditions? Or do you think that the orchestra doesn't have the right to choose who goes into their band based on musical merit and talent, that their orchestra should reflect the people in the community?
I think it should all be about talent. As a musician, it's about talent for me, and it's about working. The blind auditions, it also shows how hard you work at your instrument and how much you're dedicated to do it. An orchestra doesn't have to have you in there. You don't have to be part of the orchestra if it's just because your skin's a different color, right? You don't. It's hard because like you want your orchestra to be inclusive, but at the same time, you're not going to have the same standard, and you're not going to be as good if you just let anyone in. You need to have people that are like a good player. If it just happens that they're Asian or dark-skinned, then that just makes it better, but it shouldn't matter. If you want more diverse people in, then you need to encourage more diverse people to play instruments, to work hard to be able to come in. That should be encouraged, but they shouldn't be forced to come in. It kind of puts the standard of music down, in my opinion.
So do you think that if diversity was taken on and say they would have like here's our dark people of color audition, this is our Latino audition, this is our gender audition, do you think that that is, even though they're all highly talented, highly gifted, do you think that do you think that affects the people seeing the concert, seeing the orchestra? If you're paying for a ticket and you're paying for the best of the best, it's do you think it would affect the overall sound of the band and what the customer, what the person going to see the show would be receiving?
No, not at all. Anyone can play any song, but it doesn't matter what you look like. Anyone can play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Anyone can sing it. Just you gotta be good at it to be part of the band, that's all. And they have the right to have a high standard. If you don't have a high standard, no one would want to work at their no one would want to work at their instrument. No one would work at all. If it was so easy to get in, then anyone would be able to, and there wouldn't be a standard. There wouldn't be any good music out there because anyone can do it. That's what I think.
So currently, you're studying a bachelor in music. Quality of the band will be affected if blind audition is taken away.
I believe so, yes. Or at least the standard will probably drop a little. I know for it was a lot easier for women to actually get into bands in the first place because of blind auditions. If we went back to those days, women would still struggle to get in. And other races would struggle to get in. Now, if we take away the blind auditions, I think it would be kind of a role reversal. Some people just won't be able to get in at all, really, and some people will find it a lot easier. But it won't be the same as before.
So if there's a quota of people auditioning, so the orchestra's got to have so many people of colour, so many Latinos, so many disabled people, so many people of a particular gender, do you think that this will affect the overall women in the orchestra if those can identify as a woman is openly transgender and they identify as a woman, would you be worried that the amount of women overall would be less in there if it was put on a particular quota of how many people can be in the orchestra? So if they're looking for diversity, then they look at their community and they say, we have X amount of percentage of these people and X amount of percentage of these people. Would you be worried that, say, somebody who identifies as a woman would then take a woman's place on the orchestra?
Possibly, highly possibly. That's why I don't believe in having restrictions of certain races, sexes, and sexual orientations in orchestra. It's all about music. In my opinion, it's all about music. If you can't be to the standard of that orchestra, then just go to a different orchestra. It's not about your sex or your race. It's about music. I don't believe there should be certain amount of certain people in there. If you're good enough to get in, you're good enough to get in. That's just my opinion.
So the best way to audition for an orchestra for diversity, in your opinion, as a young musician yourself and a songwriter yourself, the best way for it to be diverse and to be honest and true is to keep the blind audition. Would that be correct?
Yes. Yeah, it would.
Well, I just want to say a really, really big thank you to Melody today for coming and having a bit of a chat with me on my little turfy channel here. I found the story very, very interesting, and I just wanted to see what someone young had to say in regards to the blind auditions. So, thanks for dropping by.
See ya. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Stone out.